Hello everybody, welcome to my channel. This is where I talk about all things Beatles, music, movies, and physical media. If you like what you see, please click subscribe and hit that alarm bell if you want to be notified of new videos. Thank you to my new subscribers. I'm almost at 500. I've been doing this since 2014, so I've hit 500. I really appreciate it. Spread the word. This came as a kind of shock, sort of a buzz around the internet now over the last couple days. Steven Spielberg, as you can see, is one of my favorite filmmakers. Comes right after Martin Scorsese on my shelf here. He's a notch right under Scorsese for me. So he is one of my favorite filmmakers. But I'm a bit disappointed in the statements that he has made and the acts that he's going to do. As we all know, the Oscars were last weekend. I'm not going to get into the debate of Green Book. It's all on the internet. You can see it yourself. He's been commenting on Roma, primarily Alfonso Cuarón's Roma. And Alfonso Cuarón is one of my favorite directors of recent year. You know, I've loved everything he's done, going back to Y Tu Mama Tambien. He's been sort of a bit upset in the fact that it won for Best Director. And it also won for Best Cinematography. And it won for Best Foreign Film. And he's made statements stating that, and he's made statements as recent of this past week, that once you've committed to doing something for Netflix, you've committed to doing television. Shouldn't be nominated for an Oscar. It should be nominated for an Emmy. Once Netflix options these films and they purchase them or they put up the money or any sort of streaming on demand service, it's now television. And of course he said there is nothing wrong with that. You know, television's fine. A spokesperson for his company, Amblin, has stated that he's trying to work with Academy members to change the rules, to outlaw this. A part of me could see his point, but also a part of me is like, Steven Spielberg should know better. A few years ago in 2012 or 2013, Spielberg and Lucas both gave an interview together where they said tentpole films, in other words, the big blockbusters that Hollywood studios are flooding the market with, are going to be the death of the industry. Now, I am a big fan of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I love the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I can't wait for Captain Marvel. I can't wait for Avengers Endgame, when we finally wrap up in a big grand finale this section of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, when these stories that started with Iron Man come to an end. And I think that's a franchise that is doing extremely well and is done very intelligently, and it's a smart blockbuster. But nowadays we have Disney flooding the market with remakes of their animated films, Warner Brothers flooding the market with now the Fantastic Beasts series, and there's a lot of films that are getting lost in the shuffle. I'm a bit upset that Steve McQueen's Widows from last year didn't do that well. It came out on the same day as the Fantastic Beasts sequel. I think it was one of the best crime films of all time, and being a former Chicagoan, finally a crime epic that takes place in Chicago. The thing is, the studios aren't taking risks. Now, Roma is a foreign film done by a major filmmaker who already won an Oscar for Gravity, so that may have had a limited market to begin with. But there's others going to Netflix. Steven Spielberg's best friend, good buddy, sort of brother, you could say, Martin Scorsese, had The Irishman, his upcoming film with Robert De Niro, Al Pacino, Harvey Keitel, Joe Pesci. They had that at Paramount. Paramount had it. Paramount, maybe because they thought Silence was going to gross over 100 million, and Silence was never going to be that type of film that was going to gross that type of money. It's an art film. Put it into turnaround. And their statement was, yeah, we're not going to make it. Scorsese's a filmmaker who likes to take risks, and we're not in a position to take a risk now. And it was a risky adventure because they de-aged with CGI Al Pacino and Robert De Niro to age them back to their 20s in the movie. Where was Spielberg to help his friend out? Spielberg, DreamWorks, his company, his studio, they could have stepped in, given Scorsese what he needed. I mean, they're friends. He could have done that. No other Hollywood studio stepped in to pick up the film. Netflix did. Netflix also gave Scorsese his largest budget to date, close to $200 million. I think it's $180 million. His largest budget to date. And freedom to make the film he wanted to make. That sounds like United Artists back in the 70s. I'm sure Scorsese would have loved to have that movie on the big screen. That's what he's making it for. He's not making it for television. But Scorsese and countless others are being shut out by the Hollywood studios. Yes, there's specialty companies in some of the major studios, like Universal has Focus. There's also Open Road. There's also, Fox Searchlight. There's Sony Pictures Classics. They have these artsy divisions now. And those are the films that they're pushing for the Oscars now. But Warner Brothers isn't taking a gamble anymore. Paramount's not taking a gamble. It's all sure things that are going to gross over $200 million opening weekend and pretty much be forgotten about. I don't include the Marvel Cinematic Universe in there because those films are being remembered. They really are. But there's others out there that are just, that are forgettable. Another digitally animated film at Columbia, another Hotel Transylvania 5, and How to Train Your Dragon 6. And like I said, Disney doing live-action remakes or CGI remakes of their animated films, like The Lion King coming up. That's unnecessary when there are voices out there that need to be heard. And they're making their films to be shown on the big screen, but they're not taking a chance on them. Robert Altman and McCabe and Mrs. Miller and Nashville would probably not be made by a major Hollywood studio nowadays. It would be made for Netflix because everybody would turn it down and say, McCabe and Mrs. Miller is not going to gross $100 million opening weekend. MASH isn't going to gross $100 million opening weekend. Sidney Lumet, Dog Day Afternoon isn't going to gross $100 million. Network, that's a niche film. We're going to give that to Open Road, our subdivision here. We're not going to give it as much promotion as this. There was a time when every single thing was acknowledged. And maybe the lack of newspaper ads nowadays is part of that. But that's a different topic. So Spielberg should know better. He's got clout. He's got power. He is the most financially successful filmmaker in the history of filmmakers. He truly is. So Spielberg can make a 5-hour film about a glass of water and nobody would go and blink an eye. He could use that clout to get the films made by these filmmakers that want to take a risk. So that's what Netflix is doing. They're giving a voice to the filmmakers that want to take a risk. And it upsets me that he is just not seeing that. You don't want it to go to Netflix? Fine. You don't want a film that was shown on Netflix that was originally made for the big screen and only had a 2-week window in the movie theaters while it was on Netflix at the same time. You don't want that getting Oscars? And if other Hollywood studios are upset that those films are now going to be nominated for an Oscars, well then guess what? What do you have to do? Only one answer. Back those films. On the other side, though, I do think that Netflix should give these movies a wide release. Approach them like a regular film because they are regular films. I think Netflix should give them time in the movie theaters before they go to Netflix. The way Amazon does with Amazon Studios. They're in the movie theaters, and if their box office hits in the movie theaters, like any normal film, they're staying in the movie theaters because they're making them for the theaters first. Scorsese's making The Irishman for the movie theaters first. He was not conceiving that for television. Netflix should leave it alone. Release your movie, Scorsese. After it's had its theatrical run, immediately come to Netflix. That's what Netflix should do. If Netflix does that, maybe the Spielberg thing would go by the wayside. But another reason why Spielberg should know better. He did a box office hit in 2012 for Lincoln. This film almost went to HBO because 20th Century Fox, I believe, didn't want to release it, even though it was a DreamWorks Fox co-production. Fox didn't want to release it. And it almost became an HBO movie. So, Spielberg should know better. But I love Steven Spielberg. I love what he does. He needs to use his clout to get these challenging films made by major studios. Just like in the 70s and the 60s and even the 80s. And even the 90s. That's my take. What are your thoughts? Leave me some comments. Keep them professional. And until we meet again.